The letter I was never supposed to read. A Warbound journal story. There are days in war that roar. Days that shake your bones with thunder. Days where the air tastes like smoke and metal and pawnee. See. And then there are days that are quiet. Not peaceful. Just, et. The kind of quiet that makes you hear things you don't want to hear. Like the soft drip of water inside a trench. Or a distant cough that never stops. Or your own thoughts walking around in your head like heavy boots. This story begins on one of those days. A gray morning. Low clouds. Cold wind. And paper. So much paper. Now listen. I need you to understand something about me. I wasn't the kind of soldier you see in posters. I wasn't charging over trenches with a rifle in my hands, yelling something brave. I was a clerk. A man with ink-stained fingers. A man with lists. Stamps. Forms. A man who spent more time counting names than firing bullets. In war, everyone imagines the battlefield is the whole story. But the battlefield is only the loud part. The rest is paperwork. And I was buried in it. I could tell you the weight of a mailbag by looking at it. I could tell you whether a letter came from home just by the way the envelope sat. Like it was holding its breath. I knew men who could guess artillery distance by sound. Me. I could guess grief by handwriting. The mail tent was always damp. Canvas walls sweating from the cold. Mud creeping in like it had rights. We had a long wooden table, stained with ink and coffee and time. A lantern hanging from a crooked hook. And piles of letters stacked like tiny bricks of hope. Some envelopes were clean and neat, written by steady hands. Some were smudged, torn, damp. Like they'd traveled through fear to get there. And every morning, without fail, the bags arrived. Letters going out. Letters coming in. Words moving across the world, trying to keep people alive. Because sometimes, a letter is more than paper. Sometimes it's proof you still belong somewhere. That morning, one bag was ripped. Not badly, just enough for trouble. The carrier dropped it on the table and muttered something about rats. I started sorting. And then it happened. A single envelope slid out. Softly. Like it didn't want anyone to notice. It landed near my boot. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because the truth is, in a world of rules, the smallest accidents feel like invitations. I should have picked it up and put it back. I didn't. I reached down slowly, as if the paper might bite. And when my fingers touched it, it was cold. Cold like it had been waiting outside too long. The handwriting caught my eye first. Careful. Balanced. Almost polite. Then the name. I recognized it immediately. Because 3 days earlier, I had written that same name on a different piece of paper. A casualty list. Not the kind of paper anyone wants to be on. I remember the way my pen hesitated before I finished the final letter. As if my hand knew the weight of what it was doing. He had died in the mud outside a ruined farmhouse. That's what the report said. No details. War rarely provides details when it steals someone. And now his name was here again. Alive on an envelope. It felt wrong in a way I can't fully describe. Like seeing a shadow move after the person has left the room. There was a rule in the mail tent. Actually, there were many. But this one mattered most. You do not read letters that aren't yours. Especially not the dead man's letters. Not incoming. Not outgoing. Because those words belong to someone. They're private. They're sacred, in a way. And also, because reading them changes you. I knew that, even then. I held the envelope and told myself I was simply checking the address. Just checking the address. That was the lie. The first lie. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been alone with something you weren't supposed to touch? And the longer you stared at it, the louder it became? That envelope felt like that. Like it was whispering. Not with words, but with possibility. I imagined the sender. Maybe a wife. Maybe a mother. Maybe a child who didn't know better. I imagined the soldier. The dead man. Writing this letter with a pencil stub, hands shaking from cold, smiling as he wrote something sweet. And I thought. If I send it back, it will disappear into the system. If I file it away, it will become another silent thing. But if I read it, I would know. Curiosity always makes itself sound noble, doesn't it? I opened it. Not fast. Not eager. Almost, respectfully. The paper inside was folded neatly, twice. The ink had bled a little from damp. And the handwriting. The handwriting was beautiful. The first line said, "My love, if you're reading this, I'm probably still alive." And I felt my throat tighten. Because I knew the truth. He wasn't alive. Not anymore. But for a moment, just a moment. His words made him feel alive anyway. He wrote about small things first. The kind of things people write when they want to pretend the world is normal. He wrote about a loaf of bread he dreamed about. About the smell of apples. About how he missed the way she folded blankets. Perfect corners, like she could tame chaos with her hands. He joked about the soup. He said it tasted like someone had boiled a boot and then apologized to the boot. I chuckled. Then I stopped, because it felt wrong to laugh in a mail tent full of war. He described the sky. He said some nights the stars looked like pinholes punched into a dark curtain. And I could see it. I could see him looking up, trying to remember how peace feels. He ended the page with, "Tell me about your day. Even the boring parts. I miss boring." Then the letter changed. Not suddenly. Just, like a man lowering his voice. He wrote, "Something strange happened today." He explained that during the fighting, he fell behind. Smoke everywhere. He got turned around. And he ended up in a place he wasn't supposed to be. Too close to the enemy lines. He wrote that he heard someone groaning in the mud. He thought it was one of ours. He crawled closer. And it wasn't. It was an enemy soldier. A young one. Terrified. Bleeding. He didn't say bleeding like gore, he just said, hurt badly. And he wrote something that made my fingers go cold. I helped him. He wrote, "I know what you're thinking. Don't be angry." And I remember whispering out loud, without meaning to, "Why would you do that?" He answered on the page as if he could hear me. He said, "Because he sounded like my brother." That sentence. That sentence is the heart of this story. Not bullets. Not flags. A voice in the mud sounding like someone you love. He explained how the enemy soldier kept trying to speak, but couldn't. So he gave him water. Pressed cloth to his side. Tried to keep him from panicking. He wrote. He looked at me like he expected a knife. I gave him a canteen. At this point, my heart was beating faster. Not because of fear. Because I knew I wasn't supposed to be holding this. I wasn't supposed to know this man's secret kindness. And yet, I couldn't stop. Because the letter had become a doorway. And I had stepped through it. He wrote. If anyone finds out, I could be punished. And then. But I'd rather be punished than become the kind of man who steps over a human being. I heard a sound outside. Boots. Voices. Someone laughed. And I snapped the letter closed like it was hot. My hands shook. The envelope felt heavier now, like it carried more than paper. I waited. No one entered. The voices moved away. And I opened the letter again, slower, calmer. Like I was accepting the fact that I'd already crossed the line. He wrote. If I don't come home. And the words after that. They weren't dramatic. They weren't heroic. They were simple. That's what made them hurt. He told her where his pocket watch was hidden. He told her which neighbor owed him money. He told her to keep the blue scarf because it looked like the sky on their first date. He wrote. Don't let the war steal your laughter. Please. Promise me. Then he wrote something softer. I'm scared sometimes. But when I think of you, I feel steady. And I swallowed hard. Because I could picture her reading that. And then I remembered. She wasn't reading it. I was. The wrong person. Now here's where my story truly begins. Because once I read that letter, I had a choice. Option 1, I follow the rules. I stamp it. I file it. I let the system swallow it. Option 2, I do something else. Something human. Something dangerous. I stared at the envelope until my eyes hurt. And I thought about the woman on the other side of it. Waiting. Every day. Checking the door. Listening for footsteps. And I thought about the soldier who wrote it. Never knowing his words would get stuck in a tent with me. I looked at the address again. It was clear enough. A small town. A street name. A house number. I didn't have a car. I didn't have leave. But I had something else. Access. And in war, access is power. I found a map. Not a clean one. A map with coffee stains and folds like scars. I traced the town with my finger. And I made a plan so quiet it almost didn't feel like a plan. I would make sure she got the letter. Not officially. Not through the system. But as a person. Weeks later. After requests, signatures, and favors I paid with exhaustion. I found myself on a transport truck heading toward that region. Cold wind. Rattling metal. Men silent, each living inside their own thug. HTS. When I reached the town, it looked ordinary. That's the strangest thing about war. One place is burning. Another place is sweeping the RCH. I walked down the street slowly. Houses lined up. Windows fogged. A dog barked once and then went chew. Yet. I stood in front of the number on the envelope. My heart hammered like I was the one going into bat. Plea. She opened the door before I knocked. Not because she knew me. Because she was always listen. ING. She was younger than I expected. Tired eyes. Hair pulled back quickly, like she hadn't cared about beauty in a long time. She looked at my uniform and her face changed. That tiny movement, that shift from hope to fear. I'll never forge. It. Is it, she started. And she couldn't fie. Nish. I held out the envelope. Not the casualty notice. Not the official paper. Her letter. His W. Words. I'm not supposed to give you this, I said softly. But I thought you should have. It. Her hands shook as she took it. She didn't cry right away. She just stared at the handwriting. Like she was touching his hand through time. She stepped back inside. Not shutting the door fully. Leaving it open a little, like she didn't want to be alone with the M. Oment. She read silently. Her eyes moved line by line. Her lips parted once as if she'd almost spoken. Then she pressed the paper to her chest. And she finally cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just, quiet tears. The kind that fall without permission. She looked up at me and whispered. He was kind. And I nodded. Because yes. He was. And now I knew it. I walked back down the street alone. The town felt different now. Not because it changed. Because I did. For the rest of the war, I kept thinking about that letter. About how words can outlive bodies. About how love can survive incid. Ink. And I kept thinking about that secret in the letter. The part where he helped the enemy S. Oh dear. Because it made me realize something simple. Something even a child could understand. A person is still a person. Even if they wear the wrong uniform. And sometimes, the most important thing you can do in war is not become a monster. I never told anyone what I did. I wasn't looking for praise. I just wanted the right person to read the right words. And every time I think of that woman holding the letter, I remember the last line he wrote. I'll never forget it. Promise me you'll keep Lao. Ging. Stories bound by war.